My name is Vincent. I'm with the RTI Dealer Experience team. I'm joined by Matt Sundberg, and we're really excited to go over some of the great features of 10.4, which is finally here. For those of you who don't know, 10.4 was posted a short time ago on our website, so download that. You're not going to see incredible differences with the beta that's been out there. But you know, we're official now, and welcome to the 10.4 training. I want to thank everyone who helped beta test this release, and I especially want to thank our engineering team, our software developers, the rest of our staff, our marketing staff. These releases are so hard to coordinate, and Matt's been heavy at work in testing and implementing these features, and they really are astonished by the effort. So kudos to everybody. There are some handouts in the handout section of this webinar, so everyone feel free to download a handout. We have a handout there for RTiQ and some of the features. And before we continue, let's go over some rules. We're going to be focusing this session on 10.4 and 10.4 alone. So we'll limit the questions to anything other than 10.4 if you don't mind. Anybody who asks me about an Alexa driver or something to do with any new release or anything else is not getting a Christmas card this year. So no questions about any of that stuff. Let's focus on our release. I'm certain that you'll find that this release is full of great features. You don't see releases like this normally. This is one of the biggest releases arguably in a while with Integration Designer and Apex. We're excited for it. So we're going to go over the features. We're not going to go heavy into mirror view and RTiQ. We're going to have a kind of a separate recorded webinar for those guys, but we will tackle some of it, and a lot of it is straightforward, but there'll probably be a separate mirror view webinar. Mirror view has not been released yet, even though it's available in the software. So just stay tuned for that. We're just putting the final touches. We pretty much logistics phase. So it's all ready to roll. We just have to get logistics in order. So we'll have a webinar in due time. There's also training documentation, or I should say the RTI user guide for RTiQ on the dealer site, and that's right under the software. We'll probably wind up posting it in technical bulletins, but it's the same handout that you see here in the webinar. So everything you need to know about RTiQ is in there. Again, we'll touch on that. So the features that are in RTiQ that we've added are not only major changes to the software in terms of functionality, but there's also some subtle little differences that we can show you in advance. Let's look at one subtle difference. A lot of people get a little frustrated with the fact that you have to click on sources in order to click on pages, and it does require a lot of clicking around and moving around the place, and a lot of people wanted to see these all in one place. So now all you need to do is click on the controller in the tree, and you'll see all the source pages for that device. So over here you'll see I'm clicking on the CX7, and you'll see the pages available for the CX7. It'll show you the page and the name that was alias to it or renamed to it. So I could easily page through the pages here and make any cosmetic changes. So something that makes things a little easier for you guys, a little more familiarity with this in terms of kind of making it more ID-like without slowing you down. So here's a pretty cool feature that's worth mentioning. Nothing crazy, but something that would nonetheless be desirable for a lot of people out there. Just one thing about this feature, as you click on the devices in the home page, you might not be able to do a lot of these things like merge pages in Page Wizard. So you'll have to go to the underlying source page to do that. So for example, if I wanted to merge some pages in for the CX7 and use the Page Wizard or these new features, I'd have to do it under the source and then page. But if you click on the controller, it's a pretty cool way of going through your system and just making any cosmetic changes you'd like and moving things around. So another feature we added is we've added some increased macro command features. Let's take a look at a source macro on a button. In this case, this red function. If I hit the plus sign, you're going to see some new features in the minimum repeats type. You can now customize it. So you can set the minimum repeats type to custom and then set the minimum repeat for this specific button. As you know, if you went to your IR properties for your device, you could change the minimum repeats across the board quite simply here. So this is just a way for you to basically click on the macro and customize those minimum repeats, making a minimum repeat any number you'd like, and then using the repeat while button is pressed feature if you like also. So just some subtle features, some improved page management, and some new macro command features. Okay, so those are pretty much the subtle changes for Apex. The rest aren't really so subtle. We have some new products. We have RTiQ and RTi Mirror View. If I click on the XP8V processor, RTi Mirror View can now be added as an expansion device. So I click expansion devices and add expansion devices, and now you'll see the VIP1 Mirror View product available here. I can configure this just like an expansion device. Okay, so now this is available in your routable commands, and I'll show you how that works later. Again, we'll be doing a separate presentation on how Mirror View works, how to configure it as far as being a video over IP solution, but we'll have documentation in a webinar that's recorded for you in a few days. No real rush on that. Again, Mirror View is going to be in a few minutes. In a few days, I'm sorry. Matt's going to be answering questions in the chat window. So of course, if you have any questions, just fire away as we go. Another feature we're adding to the software is RTiQ. And as you can see, I'm clicking on the processor, and now RTiQ shows up under the processor configuration. Of course, it'll be a separate, it'll be a tab in Integration Designer 9, and the documentation will show you that. But for the most part, everything is pretty much the same as far as configuration goes and everything else. So when you configure RTiQ, the first thing you're going to do is go to your properties and you're going to actually enable it. So I'm at the client's house and I'm enabling RTiQ here. My system name obviously is going to have to be a little bit more specific than this. Maybe I'll want to call it Jones Residence or even the client's name. So you always want to keep it real informative so that when you look at your list of clients, you don't see anything like XP8V or master bedroom processor or anything like that. So just make sure you give it a good name there. Now, monitor devices. Again, this is just the back end I'm showing you. This is not the front end where you monitor. This is the back end where you set it up. So if you click monitor devices here, I can add some devices. I can basically go in and I could either, I can name the device. First of all, maybe I want to ping a device. Maybe I want to ping the customer's PC that's in the den or something. So I can enter in the address and that would be available for me to ping it. I could go here if I really felt like it and enter in all the information I want to do, but for the most part, that will ping the device. So if the ping doesn't go through, you'll get an alert on your pop-up, and we'll show you the back end at another time. Right now, we're working on a way to have a test example demo user so that sensitive information is not conveyed over the web, and we'll have that soon. Another thing you can do is you could actually monitor IP, and what that does is really monitor port communication. Make sure your ports are communicating to a certain device, maybe a server or something that's using a port for communication. All right. Another thing you can do is purposely monitor system variables for devices. So let's just say I wanted to monitor the system variable for Denon Hios, maybe a connection state. Maybe I wanted to monitor the connection state, and when it returns a false or a disconnection, I'll get an alert. And you're going to notice that many drivers now are going to be set up with all these, with all this metadata that probably wasn't overlooked, but it probably wasn't important in the past. Now we're going to make sure we either go back and populate this if it doesn't exist, or we're going to make a real effort to kind of cater to RTiQ's ability to track variable statuses. So, you know, you want to fill this in pretty with a lot of information here, and you could bypass the error if you like. Now, of course, RTiQ will always monitor your RTI devices as well, so no need to enter in all of that stuff. You could also configure actions. Now, these actions are just going to be actions you could trigger from your truck or from your home when you get an alert that something's going on. Maybe you got an alert that the client's router lost the pinging or something, or maybe you got some error from some specific piece of equipment. You could automatically reboot your processor remotely without a PDU, but if you do have a power unit in the house, a power unit, maybe you can reboot the network or something. So I'm creating an action here to reboot the network, and maybe I'm going to go to my macro steps here, and I'm going to basically reboot one of my Panamex outlets. So let's reboot outlet 1 or something here, and that will reboot your network. And you could do that with any device you want or anything like that. You could also create diagnostic actions. Maybe you want to create something that will change HDMI inputs to the right input in case your client doesn't see a video signal. You can kind of change things around and kind of ask him if everything's okay. You could also put some events on the processor and run them manually. So for example, maybe you want to add an event to the processor that would, maybe a sensor event or something that would trigger a macro. You could pretty much add that to your RTiQ, add that to your processor as an event, and then trigger this action using the, let's see, the event control or the if event enabled action. And so you can enable an event here. Maybe your client needs you to perform something for him, or you want to give your customer some access to, you know, have him, you know, basically arm the system or something like that, should he forget to do it remotely and he needs to do it on an emergency basis. So you could do all these things, and these actions can be triggered as if you were on site. Now, this is just the back end. Obviously, it's going to monitor all of your RTI devices as well, and all your driver activity and things like that. But these are things that you can do in terms of monitoring specific devices and creating certain actions that you can run remotely, just like you were there on site. So use them wisely. You'll get better at it. You'll be able to make things more and more reliable. And whatever you really feel like doing at a customer's house to troubleshoot through a macro, you can do remotely. So it's some great innovation, and I know dealers are going to have a really great time with it. Are we done here? No, there's going to be a lot of future development with RTiQ, so look for that to evolve over time in a way where we can do pretty much try to eliminate as many service calls as possible. Okay, RTiQ. All right, so then there's a lot of other features in Apex. So if you click on a device like the RTI panel, for example, you're going to notice that there's this new layers box here in the upper right. If you don't see it, it's here and it's available. It's hiding somewhere, but I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to see it. So now a lot of devices are built with layers now. Now there's at least one layer on everything. There's a page. The page itself is a layer. So as you can see here, we have 3 layers to this interface on this iPad. We have a home page, a home watch page, And by the way, we did get rid of the home, watch, listen, and play pages. Now we just have one home watch page. So no need to delete those pages anymore or anything like that. So on this page, the home page, by default, will have a watch page, a top toolbar, and a bottom toolbar. So that's the difference. Apex will automatically create for you these layers automatically to begin with. Now, if I want to hide certain layers, I have these little eyes on the side here, on the left side. I could just click on them and they'll hide the specific layer that belong to that specific, they'll hide all the bitmaps that belong to that layer. I could even hide the home page and now all my layers are hidden. Or if I just want to see my top toolbar or my bottom toolbar, I can do that as well. So it lets you work with these layers and manage them pretty efficiently. Now you can lock your layers as well. By default, your actual page is going to be unlocked, so you can make edits as you will. But you could easily unlock a page. See, notice the top toolbar, I can't click around, neither the bottom toolbar. But if I wanted to remove like one of these icons from the toolbar, I could simply unlock the bottom toolbar, make sure it's selected, and then maybe I can get rid of this watch icon. Not only will it get rid of it here, but it will get rid of it across the board on all my devices, even my Blu-ray and all my other devices. You'll notice that there's no watch. I was able to eliminate that from one location. Now, how do layers work? How do you create them? What are they used for? Well, we've always had the ability to create invisible state variables and hide things when we wanted to, but layers brings it to another whole level. So let's create a layer and show you how it's done. So whenever you want to create a layer, we have some icons in the top here that show you how to do it. Maybe you want to add a new blank layer to this screen. So maybe I want to create a mute pop-up. So it's pretty easy to do. I create the layer by clicking add a new blank layer, and it asks me for a name. So I'll name this mute pop-up. Okay, the source that it'll be sitting on locally is the home page, not really important. You could move it around to wherever you'd like. Now I could choose right here when this layer should be visible to the user. So the user won't see this layer, and I could select whatever I'd like. I could select a variable, like a local variable. I could select a macro flag or even a variable from one of these devices. So whenever the Yamaha mutes, I want this layer to show. Okay, so I could lock this layer, which I don't want to do yet. I haven't really created it yet, but I could choose to share it. And share it means that I want this layer to be available in other places on my interface, not just this page. I want this layer to be available everywhere if I choose to let it be made available. You don't have to, but this just indicates that this layer should be available should you decide to make it available. And I'll show you how it works. So I'm going to click share because I want this mute pop-up to be pretty much everywhere. And I'm going to click OK. Now it automatically puts the layer all the way on top. And the significance of that is that so no buttons overlap it. Nothing on the home page or the toolbars will overlap this mute pop-up that we choose to do. Now I could hide all the other layers when I'm working on this mute pop-up. And I could just select the mute pop-up, make sure it's selected so it knows you're working on it, and make sure it's unlocked so you could actually build something on this. So I'll get my pencil, I'll make sure my square is selected, and I'll draw a mute pop-up here. I'll center it on my screen. I'll put some text on it. I'll make it big enough to see. Okay, maybe that's not big enough, but well, for now it'll do. And now this layer, if I look at all my other layers, will exist here, and it will pop up when I decide to mute my receiver, or when the user decides to mute the receiver. Now, what about all the other pages? Well, I have other pages here. I have a television page for my iPad, and I have a Blu-ray page. What about those pages? Now, what I could do here with the second button, it's insert a shared layer. So this will allow you to insert a shared layer. And I apologize for spelling this with some inaccuracy here. So I can select the shared layer that I want to put here. And as you can see, I can even change it if I like. If maybe I decide to change it to something else, so I don't have to use those attributes. I can make the attributes here something different. Maybe you don't have, maybe you're using a page where you're not really using the Yamaha. Maybe you want this to be your audio zone pop-up. So you could always do that. Now I could choose to insert it here and then keep going around individually, or I could just click insert to all pages. And that will put that pop-up on every single page across the board for me. I'm on my Blu-ray. Let's look at my Sonos player. There's my pop-up. Okay. Now, the beauty about this now is it's locked. I can't touch this. But let's just say I wanted to edit this pop-up. I'd have to select it and then unlock it. Maybe I want to make my font a little bit bigger. So I'll bring it up to 42. The beauty of this is that no matter where I go now, this will follow suit. I won't have to do it in a million places. So I'm managing my layers in pretty much one place. Okay. Now, you don't have to, this is my homepage from my CX7. You don't have to use the same attributes for every page. You could always change it around. All right. And now these toolbars by default can be controlled in one single place. There's no longer the need to have to populate these on every single page. And I know we have tags, but you could get rid of these pretty easily and stuff like that. So you wouldn't have to worry about doing this in 100 different places. If you didn't have a security system, well, get rid of the security button. Since it's a shared layer, anywhere you go will not have that security button anymore. So layers are incredibly easy. They make things a lot simpler, and they allow you to manage some really heavy functionality. Another guy sent me a file the other day with an entire interface on one page, and it was kind of funny. But these are things you can do with layers now. They're just so much more manageable than before, and they're not just about buttons, they're about interfaces. You can create pop-up scrolling lists, something I'm going to show you called viewports soon, and other things that will allow you to kind of build in these layers and manage them wisely. And you can get really, really creative with them and use as many as you like. Some people ask questions about adding volume control. So, for example, if you have an audio distribution system with a lot of zones, you could have a little button here that you could add to your toolbar that will pop up a layer of volume controllers, just like a Sonos system or something like that, where you have access to every room volume all at once and you don't have to manage them individually everywhere. You can make changes at will. So enjoy those layers, and really you can get creative with them. Okay, so that's layers. What else do we have going on? Well, you might notice also when you start out your system, you might notice that we have a little bundles area here. What are bundles? So what bundles are libraries of devices that you export from Apex. All right, these are interfaces that you're happy with. Maybe something you spent a lot of time designing. Maybe something you developed your own tags with and attached functionality to them. Or maybe something that you used Apex tags and attached commands that weren't attached before. This will preserve all that information so you can import these into your projects easily. But before we show you how to import them, let's show you how to make them. How do you create these libraries? Which, by the way, knowing our installer universe, they're going to get quite large. So over time, when you create an interface, I expect you to export it so you can have it available for your next project or for another room in the project. So for example, on our CX7, maybe we spent a really long time on our Blu-ray page. We tagged everything, we made it look beautiful, we populated commands like Netflix that weren't there before. This is probably more of a simple example, but you get my drift. Well, you could export this device. So there's an option available called Export Source Bundle. So if I click that button, I can name that bundle to whatever I'd like. best to keep it informative. First, you want to start with the device name or the source name, however you like to do it, and then the model, and then maybe what the device is. Okay, and then you select the interface that you want to export. And of course, the source name will be filled in for you automatically because you selected it. And then click OK. This will export the device, and now it'll be available for you on your next system file or in another room if you like. So for example, let's say I added another room called the basement, and then I added another controller, a CX7 here to my basement. I could then go to my bundles, select that CX7 Sony Blu-ray I exported, and then click Next. I get to assign the IR port. I get to call it what I like. And I get to create the page on the device that that interface is on. And now I have that interface on my CX7 Blu-ray with all my tags intact and my design, my backgrounds, everything that was there before is now here again. So bundles are incredible. They're very easy to use. And you might notice if you export a driver interface, like let's say my Sonos. So maybe I want to take my T3X and export this. You could include the driver properties so that you can use your driver properties for other projects. Maybe you typically do a 3-room system or something like that, or you want to use all your zones or something like that. You could do that by just clicking that include driver properties, and it will preserve all the properties within the driver, not just the commands, but the actual corresponding properties. Great for some systems that have some really big driver functionality. This is probably not the best example, but you get the idea. Driver properties will be completely preserved. Okay, that's bundles. And I imagine, you guys will be creating these bundles as you move along. And I could see one day where there'll be hundreds of bundles. By the way, these bundles are stored in your Integration Designer Apex templates area. They're very small files. They won't kill your disk space. And I imagine you guys will be able to Frankenstein projects together in a matter of minutes now using this bundles feature. And I imagine you will also share bundles with each other. We'll be creating bundles for you as well. Hopefully we could all have a pretty big database of bundles that could be shared for a lot of devices out there. And I even imagine graphic designers like Noel Blackman developing bundles versus developing individual driver files, because this is a lot easier. So just a great way to recycle projects and put projects together really quickly. I'm really excited about it. We've been waiting a long time for it. And not only can you recycle projects from system file to system file, but room to room as well. So use these and use these well. Okay, that's bundles. As if we didn't discuss enough, there's another feature. Now, this feature for now is only available on the RTI panel devices. Right now, they're available on iPhones and iPads. Android devices, they're available, but in order to get them to work, you need to have a firmware update for your Android device. Now, we're testing a beta for that, which should be released shortly. So this feature called Viewports won't be available right away for Android, but we're feverishly testing it, so you should see that soon. Now, what are viewports? Well, everybody's asked for a long time for horizontal scrolling lists. Well, this takes it one step over that. Not only do we give you the ability to have a scrolling list, basically, that could go horizontal, but we give you a lot more flexibility in design and feature. Let's see how it works. So I'm going to just hide my mute pop-up because it's bothering me, and you can do that pretty easily now without a lot of implication. The way it works now is you take your pencil, and now you'll see this new drawable icon here called Draw a Viewport. Make sure you select that. And what you can do, make sure your layer is selected also. I'm selecting the home page and make sure it's unlocked. That's another thing you guys have to be really wary of, that you're just selecting the right layer when you're making changes. So I'm going to select and I'm going to draw a viewport. So I'm just going to start over here and just draw it across the screen. There's a reason why I started here, so I'll show you that in a minute. Now, if I right click to edit, as it says, now I'm editing my viewport. I'll go to my bitmaps, and let's pretend I'm creating a source selection for my global iPad. Maybe I'm selecting zones for it. So let me just find some icons that are for zones. This looks good. Let's bring a bar in here, and we could always, make sure that you always select the selection tool after you draw your viewport, or else you'll run into problems. We could resize these later. There's a bathroom. I'm just going to bring in these icons here, and they kind of resize when you bring them into the viewport. It's really cool. Here's somebody's bedroom. Okay, and then here's a little gazebo outside. Now, I could make these a little bit smaller if I like. I could make them all the same size pretty easily. I could align them just like I can anything else. I could equalize the spacing, and I could center them in the viewport without doing anything. As long as I'm in the viewport, it will center them properly. Now, you'll also notice now that there's a frame button here that will allow you to draw another frame. That's the whole purpose of viewports. You could create a scrolling list using these frames. Now, I suggest you paste your second row so that you could just drop icons on the easily without having to worry about replacement and resizing or anything else. Just a little tip, you don't have to do that. It just makes it easier. And now I'll go to my third frame. So I'm just creating frames here really and putting icons in those frames. All right, I'm almost done here. I already did that one. So now I have 3 frames of selection tools. Now, you could just take, if you had these actual rooms, you could just take the room selection tags and just drop them on. So all you have to do is just drop them on. I don't have any, I don't only have 2 rooms here, but you get the idea. This will allow you to use room proxy. Or you could just put whatever you'd like in here, a macro or reverse state or anything else, unlike a scrolling list. Okay, if I click outside anywhere from this scrolling list or from this viewport, it'll close up on me. So make sure that you don't do that unintentionally. It's easy to just go back in and right click. But once you click outside the viewport, you'll see here that, that it will automatically get grayed out and not allow you to do anything to it except move it around. Okay? Now, this viewport will basically allow you to flick through it, kind of like a scrolling list, and you could use it for a variety of applications. Now, a lot of people ask, can you use viewports as a layer itself? Well, sure you can. Watch how that works. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer viewport. And maybe I only want this viewport to be visible when my XP flag 1 is set, let's just say. And I'm not going to share it because I only want this on my home page. So now this viewport will appear every time this XP flag is set. How is the XP flag set? Well, let's use this button here on the side here as a room selection pop-up. So we'll go in here and we'll create a macro on here. And now we'll go into our macro steps and we'll just toggle that flag. And that will allow our viewport to show up. This will turn blue like this. oops. And this will allow us to see this scrolling list. We could select our room, and we could easily shut it down by pressing this button again. Now, how do we add this to the layer now that we created this viewport layer? Well, we could just cut it, go to our viewport layer, make sure it's unlocked, and paste it. And now that's part of our viewport. See, if I hide it, it's not there. If I want to see all my layers, this is what it looks like. So you could add layers to your viewports. And what if you decide that you want to add a button to a specific layer? Well, there's an option when you right-click it, and you can move to any layer you like. Maybe I want to move this button to another layer because I always want it to be part of that layer. A good example would be this button. Maybe I want this to move to a different layer. Well, I could do that. All right, so that's the viewports. Pretty simple to use. Only you can go horizontally for now, but it doesn't mean you can't draw it vertically. I could draw it I could draw it this way, make sure your viewport's selected. I could draw it vertically, but I'd still have to, my viewports, when I add them, bitmaps into them, when I go to the next frame, it will go sideways. It will not go horizontally. It'll go it'll go horizontally, not vertically. So maybe we'll plan on adding it in the future. I don't know. For now, it's just a horizontal list, but you could still use it that way. I've seen pretty cool examples of people that use a vertical scrolling list to scroll horizontally. All right. Also, you could also make your toolbars viewports. It's really simple to do. I know you guys are going to go buck wild with that feature, and it's something that is again really easy to use. Okay, so that's viewports. We saw bundles. We showed you layers. Now, what about mirror view now? Besides being the fact that mirror view does the video over IP, don't forget that it's also available for you to route IR commands and serial commands. As you can see here, this port right here is the mirror view port. So I could send out, when you're adding a device to the system, for example, whether it's IR or serial, you could always decide to use the mirror view port to send the IR out. So video over IP, programmed over expansion devices, and the ability to even use Wi-Fi. You can use DLNA for YouTube support, and there's a ton of other features as well. Again, we're working on improving and bringing that line to do many other things. But you should see that shortly. You should see the documentation shortly, and we're going to have a short pre-recorded video on some of the cases where you would use it and some of the best practices and how to configure them with a web browser for video purposes. So it's a great product. I'm really, really happy to have it out. And we're thrilled with all these new features that are going to give you some ease of use in Apex and just, again, bring you to the next generation. We also have a pretty cool comparison of Apex versus ID9. Love to make it available, but I only was able to stuff 5 documents into that area on the webinar where there's the documents. So we'll try to get those to you a different way. But we're going to have questions and answer now. Anybody who has any questions to Matt or myself, fire away. Again, let's keep this to 10.4. And we'll be happy to answer your questions. Matt, if you want to mic it out, it's up to you. Otherwise, thanks for some of these comments. I'm reading some really great feedback from our dealers. We're really, really happy that you're happy, and it's all about you guys. Really, it's all about making your lives a lot easier.